Patch 13.13 is upon us with some nerfs, some buffs, and some other changes too. Starting with nerfs, we have Annie, who is losing 10 flat damage on her Q and 5% AP scaling. Next we have Aphelios, who's actually picked up a lot of popularity recently. Firstly, his Scythe Pistol is losing some lifesteal on the attacks and on the abilities. The Gravity Cannon's slow duration on attacks is now 2.5 seconds down from 3.5 seconds, which is a pretty fair change as the 3.5 second slow was insane. And on his chakrams, the Sentry Turret will now have less base attack speed. Following this, we have Ivan, whose W on hit damage is losing 10 flat damage and 10% AP scaling. In addition, Daisy is losing 10 movement speed and her Slam's base damage is losing 20 damage. These changes, especially the nerfs to the on-hit damage, are massive nerfs for Ivan, and most likely directed at the top lane Ivans that have become popular recently. Next we have Kindred, who is losing 30 base health and 3 base armor, which is going to hurt their early game. Following this we have Nico, whose Q's cooldown will now start at 9 seconds and go down to 7 as it's leveled up. The bonus proc damage on her W is losing 10 flat damage, and also while channeling her ultimate while disguised, instead of hiding the entire cast time, it will now only hide the first half a second of it, which will allow her opponents far more counterplay than they currently have. Next we have Rek'Sai, who's losing 3 base damage and 40 base health. In a similar way to Kindred, her early game will be hurt from this. Following this we have Varus, whose W on hit damage will now scale 5% better with AP. However, the maximum health damage per blight stack will now only scale 1.5% per 100 AP, which overall is a pretty solid nerf. Next we have Vi, whose passive will now grant 10% of her maximum health as a shield rather than 13%. And in addition, her ultimate will have a significantly longer cooldown, especially during the early levels. And the final nerf goes to Wukong, where the ease damage to monsters is being turned down a small amount. As for buffs, we have one for Lee Sin, where the first and second cast of his Q will now scale 5% better with AD, and the only other buff goes to Nidalee, who is gaining 5 additional movement speed. We also have an adjustment for Rel, who is losing a small amount of health regen growth per level, base magic resist, and magic resist growth per level. In addition, her Q bonus damage to monsters has now been decently increased. The shield she gains from her W crashdown has been reduced by 20 at all levels. However, the dismounted attack speed buff is now a flat 30%, which on average is better than before. In addition, her E's bonus damage to monsters has now been increased by 20 at all levels. Overall, this is a buff for jungle Rel and a nerf to support Rel, and it looks like they're getting you to lean towards maxing Q first rather than W. We also have a few very needed item changes. Starting with Duskblade, we have a bug fix where scoring a takedown while channeling an ability will no longer make you untargetable. This is mainly aimed at the Samiras and Katarinas who have been abusing this, going untargetable while ultimating over and over again. The next change goes to Essence Reaver, where the Spellblade damage will now deal 130% base AD and only scale with 20% bonus AD. This change means the item will deal a good amount additional damage in the early game, but won't scale into the late game quite as well. Following this, we have a much needed change to Shiv, where the lightning damage to minions will no longer scale with any AP, and the damage to champions will now only scale with 30% AP, which will hurt both its wave clear and scaling damage. And the final item change goes to Stormrazor, where the energized damage is going from 15 all the way up to 90. However, it will only now scale with 25% AD. Other than this, they've announced Anivia will be the next Victorious skin, with this being the last patch you can play to earn it. In addition, next season we'll only be playing 5 placement games, they're getting rid of promo series, and they're adding an emerald tier between Plat and Diamond.